أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Respected Sadr Sahib and Nazri of the organizing committee and all the brothers and Sar, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here this afternoon to inaugurate this Ijtama. By the grace of Allah, in one sense, the inaugural address was delivered by Hazur during our Jummah, our Friday today. And that is really when the Ijtama actually started. And we are very fortunate that by the grace and blessing of Allah, the Hazur Aqdas was able to address directly the congregation here through his Friday sermon. Now, I think the message that Hazur gave today is a very important message. And this is a message that Hazur has been constantly giving to us again and again and again. And it is a message that we must now take to our hearts. Even in the Jamaat Shura, this matter was discussed in great detail. And congregational prayer is something which is the most important path to our Creator. You know, we have to understand what is the purpose of our creation. The purpose of our creation is not so that we become big engineers, scientists, accountants, earn a lot of money, have big houses, and have holidays. If that was the purpose of our creation, then this whole life would be quite meaningless. And one of the things, particularly in the West, we have lost the purpose for which Allah had created us. And this is why people are moving towards atheism. And just because Allah has blessed this society with affluence, they feel that they do not require their Maker anymore. But what they don't realize is that Allah can bring change very quickly. This country has seen 2 major world wars in which millions of people were destroyed. And unless we understand the purpose of our creation, we can see that this world is heading very quickly to that destruction. At this moment in time, we have seen that the Western powers are trying to suppress the Eastern powers. And by that, they want to have total control over what is happening in this world. And they think that because of their power, they can exercise whatever control they like on whoever they like. But sometimes you get a rogue government, as we have now in Northern Korea, that can react completely contrary to the way you expect them to behave, and that could lead to a world war. So it is very, very important that Allah has brought the promised reformer to this world for a purpose. And this was going to be the type of society where a reformer was required. People are moving away from God, and Islam has become corrupted. And at this moment in time, we have strife in this world. We are seeing natural disasters in this world. And all the signs are there for the destruction of this world unless Allah wills otherwise. So when Hazur constantly is guiding us towards supplication to Allah the Almighty, it is because this very danger exists, and it is only through supplication that we will be able to avert it. And then, in doing so, we will also be fulfilling the purpose of our creation. Now, each and every one of us, and this is where we differ from the rest of the Muslim Ummah, because they feel the revelation and direct connection with Allah the Almighty has finished. But the Prophet ﷺ came and told us, no, you can have that contact with Allah the Almighty. We can still have revelation in this time. And this is where each and every one of us can have a direct contact with our Creator. Now, sometimes we become despondent because we pray for something, and we desperately pray for something, and our prayers are not answered. And we think that Allah is not listening to us. But the fact of the matter is that Allah listens, and Allah does what He knows is best for us. And we must never forget that one day we are all going to return to Him. And that is where the true life will begin. This is a very transitory period that we're going through on this earth. And it's a very small part of the creation and a very small part of Allah's plan for what is going to happen. From here, we will be going into another world, and that is where, the Prophet ﷺ has said that when our soul enters the other world, there will be further transformation that will take place. And eventually, everyone will be able to enter what is known as heaven, and there our souls will be in peace. Now, in the West, as I mentioned, there's a lot of affluence, but one thing they're missing at the moment is peace of mind. They do not have peace in their hearts. And money in itself will never bring peace to people. Although, of course, money is very essential for us to survive, but those people who create more and more wealth and they forget Allah the Almighty, they do not have peace in their homes. They do not have peace in their hearts. They don't sleep well at night. And the only way that you're going to have true peace within yourself is by supplicating to your Creator and by engaging with Him on a one-to-one basis. And you develop your relationship with Him. And once you develop the relationship, you will find that He is communicating with you, but you sometimes are not on the right wavelength to be able to pick up the messages He's sending to you. But through supplication, through prayer, you will be able to tune in to that frequency in which you will be able to hear what He is saying to you. So it is very, very important that we listen to what Hazrat Khalifatul Masih is trying to tell us. And it is a warning as well that unless we bring change in ourselves, unless we return to the purpose of our creation, we will be lost souls in this world. And not only will we not be able to help ourselves, but we'll not be able to help anybody else either. Now, the important part is that we, the Majlis Ansarullah is the organization for the elders. So we have a responsibility not only for ourselves, but we have the responsibility for our children, for our spouses, and we have to be the guide in our homes, and we have to give guidance. We have roles as fathers, uncles, brothers, grandparents. And in these various roles, we have to play a very important part in the upbringing of our next generation. We are living in a world which is driven through media, through the internet, through social media. And our children are growing up in that environment. And some of our older members have no sense of this technology. And they don't have a sense of what is happening out there. They have no idea how dangerous this technology can be. We cannot live in isolation away from what is happening in this world. Technology, social media, all of these things are here to stay. But we need to understand what the dangers are and what the implications are of this technology upon our children. And unless we understand it ourselves, we can give no guidance to our children. Now, Hazrat Muslim Maud al-Islam, mentions about the raising of children, and he makes two very important points. He says, undue leniency and undue harshness both have negative impact on children's upbringing. And no invention is evil in itself, nor can they be termed as unlawful innovations, but we must avoid their wrongful use. So you can see that Zuriakdas, in his sermon of the 18th of March 2016, also spoke on this subject. And he says, speaking about the proper upbringing of children, Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Ayatollah bin Nasr Aziz said that at times it is the wrong attitude of parents that spoils the children. Excessive harshness as well as excessive leniency both have a negative effect on children's upbringing, and children, especially when they are entering youth, should be instructed with reason and argument. Traditionally, we have played the role where the elders just gave instructions and told the children what to do. Well, we're living in a society where that type of attitudes do not work anymore. Children growing up in this society have to be approached with reason, and they have to be won through argument, not by just imposing our will on them. The Fazur is saying that they should be instructed with reason and argument. Fathers in particular should be careful about where to be strict and where to be lenient and how to instruct them. And Hazrat thus cited several episodes by Hazrat Muslim Maud, which he listened from the Prophet Messiah and which have the following morals. Eat what is lawful and appropriate, but also be careful that some things may be lawful, but it may not be appropriate to eat. This is a very deep message that Hazrat has given to us. This here he is talking about lawful being halal. And in this country, we have what we called the social security system. Now, in itself, the social security system is lawful. There's nothing wrong with it. But that is supposed to be a safety net for people. And what is going wrong is, and where it stops being halal, is when people abuse the system. And unfortunately, it is with some sadness I have to say that again and again I sometimes come across some very senior members of our Jamaat who are involved with dishonesty and are disingenuous in the way they conduct themselves. And they're sometimes office bearers. And when these things are reported to me, I feel almost desperate that we should have people who call themselves Ahmadi and are behaving in this inappropriate manner. And what we do not realize is that we are only deceiving ourselves and nobody else. We think we can be very clever and we think we can work the system and do whatever is best for us and make money from the system. But you're only deceiving yourself, you're not deceiving anybody else. Because Allah knows what is in your heart. And you cannot deceive Allah. And if you're doing things with bad intentions, and then pretending to be pious, then you're not going to win Allah's favor. Always remember this. Because Allah knows what's in your heart. Therefore, I would say to those people who are using the system in a dishonest manner, and you have entitlements, I do not deny that, people with low incomes have entitlements. But to be honest with you, it is only through hard work that you will be able to inspire your children. If you sit on benefits at home, don't do any work, what inspiration are you giving to your children? What are you telling them? Are you saying to them that this is the way they should lead their lives as well? I mean, when we were in Pakistan, any officer who was honest and had integrity, whether they were Ahmadis or not, people would say, he must be an Ahmadi, or she must be an Ahmadi. That was the morality and the level that we had achieved in Pakistan. Everyone recognized us through our honesty and integrity. And everyone wanted us to adjudicate on their behalf because they knew that when you adjudicate, you will do it through honesty and integrity. But I have to say with some concern, and that's not across the board, there is a very small element I'm talking about, who are not exercising that honesty and integrity anymore. And that is having an impact on our children. And this will continue to go from generation to generation because it is only a downward spiral. Unless we hold that integrity to the highest possible level, and that can only come through supplication and true supplication to Allah the Almighty. Because if we're not doing that, then our generations, their morality, their level of morality will continue to drop, and we will see further loss in integrity as we move forward. And this is the reason why Hazur continues to bring us back to basics. This is what we call coming back to basics. It is making our connection with Allah the Almighty through supplication. Now, time doesn't permit me, and there are a lot of studies that are being done, but the internet and social media are something that is becoming a problem in this society. And it is clear that since one of the main purposes of a social community is to share information, and some information will be disclosed to others, however, the users are sometimes not aware of the shared information and its implication. So our children are going onto social media, they're putting things out there, and what they don't realize is that by putting things out there, they lose control. People only have to say once on social media something which is incorrect. And we have incidences of this where people have gone and made false statements on the social media. But what they don't recognize is that that will live with them for the rest of their lives. The children's lives can be destroyed because nowadays what happens is that when employers, governments, or anybody wants to know something about an individual, or they want to look into the history of an individual, all they need to do is go into the social media and they'll be able to identify where a certain person stands. Indeed, even the Jamaat now is using the same resource. When at Jalsa, when we have invited people from outside the Jamaat, we now go onto the social media sites to investigate to see whether they are genuine people who should be invited to our events or not. And where we find something that they have said or something they've done on the social media, immediately the invitation is withdrawn. Similarly, an employer will go onto the social media sites now. Children are going to Facebook, Instagram, on Twitter, and making comments. Recently, a very senior member of the Jamaat actually wrote to the Prime Minister in very derogatory terms. And it was done emotionally in the moment, but once that Twitter message went out, there was no taking it back. Now the thing is, that person plays a very important part in the Jamaat. And that was not his personal message that he was sending out because of his position with the Jamaat. It would be taken as representation of the Jamaat. So office bearers have to be very responsible in the way they use social media as well, and our children too have to be. Because you can get things out there very quickly, but then once it's out there, there's no taking it back, and that will really live with you for the rest of your lives. And this is something as parents we need to think about, and we need to make sure that our children are made aware of these issues. Then the other thing that is happening on the internet is cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying is defined as aggressive and repetitive acts meant to hurt someone. And according to a study conducted by the American College of Obstetricians, 20 to 40% of adolescents report having been victims of cyberbullying. Traditionally, bullying and cyberbullying are associated with increased anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem in adolescents. Bullying also has been associated with other physical health effects, including stomach aches, sleep disorder, headaches, tension, fatigue, and poor appetite. A meta-analysis of 33 studies concluded that being a victim of bullying is a risk factor for lower grades and standardized is a risk factor for lower grades. And most recent studies have shown that bullying is associated with increased substance use and violent behavior. Now, as parents, we're probably not aware. Our children are not immune from this. This is, if it is happening in society, and if it says between 20 to 40% of adolescents are affected by cyberbullying in some way, then you can be certain that some of our children will be in that category. Again, unless we understand what is happening, and normally children would not share this information with you. You know, in the past, Zakhluthusi Sani used to say that if the child's educational record started to deteriorate, change his seat in the class. It meant that he was sitting with people that were detrimental to his progress. Well, now it's not only people sitting next to you, but it is people you're communicating with on social media. So if you see change taking place in your children, where your children are becoming less are showing less progress in their educational standard, or you see depression, or you see various other such forms, then you can be certain that there's something is happening in their life that you should be concerned about. They may never share this information with you, but you have to be out there, you have to know that this is going on, and you have to take corrective action immediately. Now, this is a long subject, and there are lots of studies that have been done on social media and its related issues. But again, every time you write something on social media, it has the potential of being around forever, as I mentioned earlier. Even if you delete it, someone else may have downloaded it and recorded or screen grabbed it. So you never know when it might catch up with you. In 2015, Ho Thomas, a Labour election candidate, had to apologize for comments he had made on the forum 9 years prior. And digital communication expert Craig McGill, who's based in Glasgow, says comments don't need to be seen by millions to have an impact. People have lost their jobs because a boss spotted something. Some companies now troll through pages of Google when looking at candidates, so that can involve some far-flung material from the past. And some would say that you're only ever one tweet or comment away from being sacked. So you can see the implications of social media in our current life. And this is something that we as parents, as grandparents, have to make sure that we may not understand the technology very well, but we can at least give guidance to our children of the dangers of this media and the impact that it can have for them for the rest of their lives. And that's something that I think we need to look at. So once again, I would say that during this Ijtima, we should reflect on what Hazur Aqdas mentioned in his Friday sermon, our responsibilities, and especially we should, each and every one of us should go away from this Ijtima trying to reflect on what Hazur said and seeing how we can bring about change in our lives to obey what Hazur's instructions are, because that will only improve your spiritual life and your connection with your Creator, and eventually it will have a huge impact upon your family as well. But in doing that, you have to make sure that you conduct yourself with honesty and integrity, not trying to be clever, not trying to see how you can beat the system, not trying to obtain something which is not yours or you don't have an entitlement to it. Because unless we bring about that change in our lives, no matter how many prayers, I mean, there are lots of Muslims in this world, even ISIS probably pray 5 times a day, but their conduct means that their prayers have no meaning whatsoever. So with prayer, the other thing is self-reformation. And without those two, you will not be able to succeed in being a good person. And that should be the bottom line. How can we be good people? May Allah enable us all to achieve this objective. May Allah bless us with Khilafat, because I think I have seen how the whole Muslim Ummah is looking for Khilafat, and they have failed to achieve that objective. And Allah has blessed us with this great blessing. And those, particularly people living in the UK, we cannot thank Allah because we have a direct connection with Khalifatul Masih. I have seen how people in other countries, they come here and just see him for 1 minute. And that 1 minute of their life can bring such a huge change in their life that they can live on that change for the rest of their lives. But we have the good fortune, we can go and offer prayers behind His Ruqdas 5 times a day. He knows most of us personally. Therefore, we have to be the role models for the rest of the world, because everyone is looking to the UK Jamaat and the UK Ansarullah and UK Khudam Lamdia to seeing these are people who live next to Khilafat. So they must be the role models that we have to follow. So unless we can give that example and leadership to the rest of the world, then we are failing ourselves, we are failing our Jamaat, and we are failing Khilafat. So my request to you is, please reflect on it, think about it, and see how you can bring change in your lives to make yourself better human beings, to make yourself worthy of being called Ahmadis. Because just Ahmadis is a very important thing. This is the organization that the rest of the world is looking to leadership. And we have to give that leadership. May Allah bless you. I pray that this Ijtima goes well throughout the 3 days. And I hope and pray that we will have a lot of spiritual uplift at the end of our 3 days of Ijtima. May Allah bless you. Will you please join me in silent prayer, please? Ameen.